Renowned constitutional scholar Alan Dershowitz says radical Dems threatening to subpoena the full Mueller report have no legal authority to demand its release.
The special counsel, under the rules, has an obligation to file a report with the Attorney General. There's nothing in the rules that require the Attorney General to make the report public, particularly if it contains information critical of people who are not indicted. So this is a political issue. This is a media issue. This is not a legal issue.
Joining me now to talk about it, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, great to see you. So,
hey,
unindicted individuals, secret grand jury testimony, as well as classified information. I mean, I'm not sure that there's a strong legal basis for Nadler and company to be demanding the full unredacted Mueller report, but this will end up being a multi-year litigation, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fake fight that the Democrats want to engage in to distract from the destruction of their dossier, their party's dossier. The Democrats on the Hill are conflicted here. It's their political party that created this evidence that Mueller is found wanting. And so why keep on fighting over that when they can fight over the subpoenaing of the Mueller report? And a subpoena isn't a magic document, as you know, Greg. You got to go to court to get it enforced. And the courts are skeptical of subpoenas that seek executive privilege material or grand jury material. And that being said, Attorney General Barr is likely to release almost all of it. So there's not going to be much to fight about, but they want to pretend to fight. And if they issue a subpoena, what it's going to do is going to actually slow the release of information. And I guarantee you that if a subpoena fight ensues, groups like Judicial Watch will be able to get this material quicker under the Freedom of Information Act than even Congress would. So this is gamesmanship by the Democrats who want to distract from their involvement in this seditious conspiracy to overthrow the president. It's that straightforward.
Well, speaking of gamesmanship, now it's a game of semantics because the media, mainstream media, as well as Democrats who for so long were howling criminal collusion are now saying, well, we didn't really mean criminal collusion. We just meant the sort of colloquial layperson's definition of collusion, which is not necessarily criminal. And there was plenty of that, they claim.
Well, you know, they want to run away from the idea of criminal collusion because I think you have a strong argument that's what was going on with Peter Strzok and others who were colluding with outside third parties like Fusion GPS in terms of an abuse of power to target a candidate for the president and then the president.
Right.
So there's a self-interest in running away from the term criminal collusion. You know, and getting back to this idea about transparency, of course it's selective transparency. They want to focus on the Mueller report, which they hope has smears in it. Well, I'm sure it does, targeting President Trump. But they don't want transparency in the FISA warrants and on the underlying corruption behind the Mueller operation and the anti-Trump operation under the Obama DOJ and FBI. And, you know, this is where groups like Judicial Watch have got to do the heavy lifting and suing in court to get this information.
And you always have.
Because Congress is not the vehicle to get information about government corruption. We kind of know that already. President Trump should go on a transparency tear. He shouldn't even have to wait for lawsuits or requests. He should direct his agencies to release it all.
Yeah.
And it would be very hard for any honest person to disagree with that.
You know what's great about their demands for transparency is now that just opens the door for the president to release those 5 groups of classified documents that he has been holding, which will totally blow the lid off and expose the corruption among people at the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Well, that's exactly right. You've got the additional material in the FISA warrant applications that he hasn't released yet. You have the interviews with Bruce Orr. We don't even know what Mueller was authorized to investigate because they've been keeping that authorizing document written months after the fact secret in large measure from the American people. And we just sued in court the other day over the leaks allegedly between Clapper and Brennan and CNN. Just imagine if the DOJ and the FBI were forced to release that type of material, or the CIA.
Yeah.
This has got to be an all-hands-on-deck move by the president. Next cabinet agency meeting, next cabinet meeting he has, this ought to be priority one.
Dems, you want everything released? Great! I'm going to release all this other stuff that will demonstrate that the law enforcers became the lawbreakers at the FBI and the Department of Justice under President Obama. I want to ask you about these calls for Adam Schiff, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and, you know, that's an oxymoron with him, to resign. What do you make of that? Is that going to go anywhere? I mean, he's certainly lost any moral authority to be head of that committee.
Well, he ought to at least step down as chairman of the Intelligence Committee. That's what happened to Devin Nunes when false charges were lodged against him by Schiff and his allies in the media or outsiders. We filed a complaint against Schiff over his improper disclosure of classified information as part of his effort to destroy Donald Trump. It was a substantial complaint, which of course the Democrats on the Ethics Committee have suppressed. So as far as we know, he can't be trusted to handle classified information. So we're under no obligation. The agencies are under no obligation to provide classified information to Adam Schiff just because he's head of the Intelligence Committee. If he's someone who can't be trusted, they should just freeze him out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Americans are beginning to realize that Adam Schiff is nothing but a phony who would walk a mile for a camera and loves to advance. Well,
this is where we need the transparency on Congress. President Trump should reevaluate whether or not the executive branch can provide transparency over Congress as well and demand answers about congressional involvement in this effort to overthrow the presidency.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want a good laugh, reread the cross-examination by Schiff of Carter Page, in which Schiff just makes a fool of himself time and time again. I don't know how he manages to think with that brain of his, but there you have it. Tom Fitton, thanks very much.
Here, House Minority Whip, Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Good to see you, sir. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Good afternoon, Martha. Good to be with you.
So your thoughts on the status of this effort to subpoena the full report from Robert Mueller? You see that the shoe goes on everybody's, on the other foot politically on these things often, as we have just demonstrated. Where do you stand on this tonight?
Well, Martha, I think if you before the politics came in, everybody, Republican and Democrat, wanted the report to be made available in full compliance with law. And here's where you're seeing Democrats break, where they're trying to say, oh, well, now we want stuff that's not even legally allowed to be displayed, because what the real bottom line is, they said for over 2 years there was going to be collusion with Russia. There was all this collusion. Why? By the way, when we're talking about releasing things, why doesn't Adam Schiff release the more than circumstantial evidence that he's claimed for years he had? I guess he's got some secret information Mueller doesn't even have. He ought to release that. So until maybe they ask every American to get a paperback novel mailed to their house of this report, they're going to try to make some kind of other political distraction to change the fact that they promised the American people for 2 years that there was this collusion. They smeared the president, they smeared family members of his, and it didn't turn out to be the case. And so now, instead of admitting they were wrong, admitting they misled the American people for 2 years, they're going to try to create some other distraction to change the subject. We should be focused on the bad apples at the FBI who were part of this investigation from the beginning, who had a political agenda. We know what happened. We don't know how many and how deep it ran. I want to see all that cleaned up so we restore the good name of the FBI. And all these people that promised there was all these things like collusion with the president that never was the case, they owe the American people an apology.
Yeah, I want to show you a poll that came out. This is an NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Does the report clear President Trump of wrongdoing? And it lines up with a poll that we showed last week as well. It does clear President Trump, 29%. Does not clear President Trump, comes in at 40%. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's not surprising, considering for the last 2 years you've seen every Democrat in Congress and, of course, the entire mainstream media going with this false narrative that there was collusion. When the report finally comes out in its form that legally the law allows, it's going to show what we've seen in the summary. No new indictments, no collusion, which there never was, but they promised it. And so maybe then the American people will see the full picture. But the bottom line is people didn't elect this majority, Nancy Pelosi, to be Speaker to keep harassing the president and his family for 2 years. They were supposed to be focusing on the problems of everyday Americans. We, by the way, are not only focusing on getting the economy back, helping increase wages for families, lowering health care costs, but also standing up for the lives of unborn babies born alive, Martha. We've seen it now in states like New York, the governor of Virginia, trying to make it legal to murder a baby after it's born alive. This isn't even part of the abortion debate, and yet they want to allow that to happen. And right now, almost half the states in this country, babies don't have legal protection under the law if they're born alive. We want to give the babies those protections. We have the Born Alive Act, Ann Wagner's bill. We're going to be bringing a discharge petition starting tomorrow to bring this bill to the floor. Let's have a debate. I think the vast majority, not only Republicans and Democrats, people who are even pro-choice think it's wrong to murder a baby once it's born alive, yet they won't even allow that vote right now.
All right, so tell me about that, and I wanted to ask you about this. Who is holding back the vote on this, and why?
Nancy Pelosi, because part of their radical agenda, look, I mean, again, this is even beyond the abortion debate, but how radical is it that you think it's okay if a baby is born alive outside the womb to still kill it? Yet in states, more and more states, they're looking at bringing this process to make it legal.
But why is Nancy Pelosi you say everybody, even people who are pro-choice, are in favor of this, so why is she not allowing a vote on this? Where does she stand on this bill? And what would she say about why she is not supporting it?
Well, clearly she's okay with those babies being killed after they're born alive. I can't explain it. I think it's murder. Most Americans do, by the way. They're shocked that we need a bill to actually protect those babies born alive. Yet you're seeing now in states like New York, the governor of Virginia literally describing this gruesome process and saying it should be okay. And it's not okay. And so if Nancy Pelosi wants to block it, I think she's way out of step with America on this. We're going to keep pushing this issue.
Well, we'd love to hear from her, why she's not bringing it forward and what her thinking is on it. Steve Scalise, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir. Great to have you here tonight.
It's always great being with you. Thanks.
Thank you.